we're picking up on page 712. Sam and Frodo are on their way up Cirith Ungol. Gollum has left them, and Sam's been kind of talking about stories and what stories are good stories to fall into and what stories are not good stories. And Sam says or asks, I wonder what sort of tale we've fallen into. Frodo, don't know. And that's the way of a real tale. Take anyone you're fond of, you may know or guess what kind of a tale it is, happy ending, sad ending. People in it don't know and you don't want them to. And then we talked about why you don't want them to. And Sam goes on and he thinks of the tale of Beren and Luthien. And he said, Beren never thought he was going to get that Silmaril from the Iron Crown and thank Gorodrim, and yet he did. And that was a worse place, blacker danger than ours. But that's a long tale, of course. Goes on past the happiness and into grief and beyond it. The into grief and beyond it is when Beren dies, leaves this world, and then Luthien dies and leaves this world because she makes the choice to be human rather than the elven side. Okay? And he keeps talking and says, and the Silmaril went on and came to Arendelle. And then Sam makes a connection. We've got some of that light. Some of the light of the Silmaril of Arendelle in your star glass, your file that the Lady Galadriel gave you. And then he says, we're in the same story. Don't the great tales never end? Frodo, they never end as tales, but the people in them come and go. Okay? When their part's ended. Our part will end later. That sounds hopeful. Or sooner. What kind of tale does Frodo really think they've plopped themselves into?
Tragedy. Yeah,
the kind you don't want to be in. Okay? And Sam says, and then we can have some rest and some sleep. What's Sam thinking? And they'll all live happily ever after. And I mean just that, Mr. Frodo, plain, ordinary rest, etc., etc. So they keep talking. Sam suggests Frodo rests, he'll stay awake, and then he starts to wonder about Gollum, top of 713. Well, even Gollum might be good in a tale. Better than he is to have Bayou anyway. He used to like tales himself. I wonder what kind of character he thinks he is. Is he a villain or the hero? And then he asks, and he realizes Gollum's gone. Right? So, they continue talking. Bottom of 713, Frodo says about Gollum, I think he really is in part trying to save the precious from the enemy as long as he can. Why? Because that would be the last disaster. If Sauron gets the ring, Gollum's a goner. Okay? And they fall asleep. And they sleep for a long time, and we see Gollum come back hours later. Gollum sees Sam back leaning up against the wall inside of the cavern. Frodo with his head in Sam's lap, and Sam has one hand on Frodo's forehead and the other on his chest. So Frodo's lying there, Sam's leaning back like this. One hand's like this and the other hand's like this. Why?
Protecting him?
Yeah, you're not going anywhere. You move, I wake up. Okay? A strange expression passed over his, Gollum's, lean, hungry face. The gleam faded from his eyes. That implies they go back to being their pale, kind of normal color. and they went dim and gray, old and tired. A spasm of pain seemed to twist him, and he turned away, looking back up the way that he came down from, shaking his head as if in some interior debate. And then he comes back. And notice, he doesn't just come back and look at them. He comes back and he slowly reaches out, we're told, a trembling hand. Why is he trembling? Very cautiously, he touches Frodo's knee, but almost the touch was a caress. Why does he touch Frodo's knee? Why not his foot? Why not his lower leg? Why not his thigh? Why not his arm? Why not his other part of his torso? Why not his face? Why specifically his knee? I think it's because Tolkien is well aware of this image in ancient literature. And this image of reaching out and touching someone's knee, or reaching out and clasping your hands, your arms around their knee, putting your head on that individual's knee, is a sign of seeking either mercy or supplicating, that praying to that person. Okay? There's a great example in Virgil's Aeneid, where one of the characters goes up to another, and the other has defeated him in battle. And the defeated one goes up and puts his arms around the other warrior's knees. He's begging for mercy. And the other guy says, no. Sword down through the back. Okay? In the Old Testament, there are a variety of passages. Specifically, one I'm thinking of is when two sons of Jacob come to receive a blessing. Okay? And what do? They put their hands on his knees. Okay? So, Gollum comes and puts his hand tentatively, notice. He reaches out and his hand is trembling. Okay? And he touches Frodo on the knee. And we're told almost like a caress. For a fleeting moment, could one of the sleepers have seen him, they would have thought that they beheld an old, weary hobbit. Notice the language that's used. The narrator isn't saying they might have thought. He's saying if they had seen him, they would. Okay? This is what they would have seen. A weary old hobbit, shrunken by the years that had carried him far beyond his time, beyond friends and kin, in the fields and streams of youth, an old, starved, pitiable thing. What would they have seen?
The ghost of Christmas future.
How so?
Well, they would have seen how they would become over time.
Okay.
And could have related to what they saw.
Most important thing was the last part. The relatedness. What's Gollum doing when he reaches out and touches Frodo's knee? AT&T used to have a commercial. Reach out and touch someone. Do you really reach out and touch someone with one of these?
He's looking for some contact with another person.
He's connecting. Literally connecting. Okay? With not just another person. Whom? People of his own kind. Other hobbits. It's like the intervening 600 years. Okay? And what are we told? He's old. He's starved. He's pitiable. That means able to be pitied. But at that touch, Frodo stirs. As soon as he stirs, Sam wakes up. And the first thing Sam sees is Gollum pawing at the master. He doesn't see him caressing. What are you up to? Nothing, nothing. Nice master. Who's the nice master? Is it the one whose knee he's caressing? Or is he even calling Sam nice master? Because previously, when we saw the Gollum-Smeagol debate, he wasn't calling Sam nice master. No, he was the bad, nasty, wicked hobbit. Okay? Sam, where have you been to? Sneaking off and sneaking back. You old villain. You call someone a villain, what does that mean they are in relationship to you?
The enemy.
The enemy. And what did we already hear Frodo say you do with enemies?
Destroy them.
You kill him. He is just an enemy. He deserves death, is what Frodo said about Gollum to Gandalf. And what happens? Look at the very next paragraph.
Gollum comes kind of back into his head.
Tolkien's writing is just masterful. Gollum withdrew himself. That is, pulls back, both physically and whatever was inside. And a green glint flickered under his heavy lids. In other words, you're going to pay for that. Almost spider-like he looked now. He was described as spider-like when they first saw him coming down the cliffs of the Imimule. Now he's almost spider-like. Why? Because Tolkien is foreshadowing. They're going to see a real spider in a moment. And it's not going to be a little spider. It's going to be a big monster. Okay? And Sam felt a bit remorseful. Like, oops! What's the problem with feeling a bit remorseful?
It's not 100% sincere.
Okay, possibly it's not that, but what else? It's too late. Better not to say than have to say, I'm sorry. That is, better not to utter the thing one shouldn't utter than have to say, oops, shouldn't have said that. Sorry. I'm sorry. You startled me out of my sleep. I shouldn't have been sleeping, and that made me a bit sharp. In other words, it's my fault, Sam is saying. But you're there, and it's real easy to cast my fault on you. But where have you been to? Sneaking. I mean, your word, Sam. Okay? So, chapter 9. We're going to go through kind of quickly. They go on, they, see the eyes and such, they feel the web, they get attacked by Shelob. I'm skipping a bunch, okay? Sam has the star glass, and he sees Frodo get attacked. Sam goes back and stands, kind of over Frodo, and Shelob tries to come down, and Sam, with Sting, stabs her. Shelob runs off, and we're told. Sam passes out, page 731. When at last the blackness passed, Sam looked up, shadows were about him. He doesn't know how long he's been passed out. Still in the same place, Frodo's lying dead beside him. All wrapped up in cords. And what does Sam think? Oh, Mirror of Galadriel. I saw this image before. And because he saw it before, he thinks he knows how it ends. He thinks he knows what the result is. And he asks himself, 731, what shall I do? What shall I do? Did I come all this way with him for nothing? And then he remembers the words he said to Galadriel after looking in the mirror. I have something to do before the end. I must see it through, sir, if you understand. Well, what can I do? I can't leave Mr. Frodo here, dead, unburied, and go home. So if I can't go home, do I go on? Is that what I've got to do? And leave him? Well, if I'm going to, then I have to take your sword, Mr. Frodo. Here, you can have mine. And I'm going to keep the, star glass of the lady. But he can't go on. The bond is too great. 732. Sam thinks, see it through? What? Me? Alone go to the crack of doom and all? What? Me? Take the ring from him? The council gave it to him. The council didn't give it to Frodo. What did Frodo do? I will take the ring. It wasn't the council's to give. Frodo brought the ring to Rivendell. Frodo had, quote unquote, possession of the ring while at Rivendell. And when Frodo says, I will take the ring, though I do not know the way, he doesn't have to ask for it back from anybody. It's just kind of the council blessed his undertaking, if you want. And the council gave him companions. What is the whole purpose of the other 8 members of the Fellowship of the Ring?
Protect Frodo.
To get him to where he needs to go. Okay? The errand must not fail. I wish I wasn't the last. Well, what did Frodo say when Gandalf told him what the ring was? I wish it didn't happen in my day. When really, really, really bad stuff happens, people go, why me? Why now? That's Sam having his little moment of pity here. Why am I left all alone to make up my mind? I'm sure to screw up. Why? Why does Sam not have confidence in himself? Because he's just a gardener. He's not a quote-unquote intellectual. He doesn't solve the problems of the world. He's just a gardener. What problems does he solve? Should I mow today or tomorrow? Should I pull those weeds or not? Should I plant those turnips or not? It's not for me to go taking the ring, putting yourself forward. And another voice kind of says, but you're not putting yourself forward. Notice, by the way, the parallel. Sam's having this discussion with himself, just like Gollum had a discussion with himself earlier. And seemingly, according to the narration at least, Gollum had just before they woke up. He looked up the path and there seemed to be an internal debate. Well, in that instant, where there seemed to be that internal debate, what does Gollum then do next? He reaches out to touch Frodo. What's that telling us? The little bit of good that is still there is winning. Until, what are you doing, you sneak? Sam just slams the door, closed, on Gollum's possible return. Or maybe he doesn't. Okay? So, Sam starts to think rather than emote. What am I going to do here now? If we're found here, or Mr. Frodo's found, and that thing's on him, well, that's it. End of story. That's the end of all of us. Lorien, Rivendell, Sharp. Really, there's no other option after that, right? He can't find it. So Sam goes. Okay. He takes a few steps. He overhears orcs. They take Frodo's body. He listens to their conversation. And what does he discover? Frodo's only mostly dead. He needs Miracle Max to come and revive him, from Princess Bride. And what does Sam think? I'm an idiot. Of course I'd screw up. And the Two Towers ends. And if you're a Brit, you now have to wait, I think it is like 9 months to figure out what's going to happen next. And so you wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. Return of the King is finally published. And Tolkien takes us where? Back to Minas Tirith, where we've not been before, but we're now with Gandalf and Pippin, because he's broken up Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Merry, Gandalf, Pippin, okay, and we still have, well, really, kind of not, but Frodo, Sam. Frodo will put a question mark, in parentheses. And he takes us back to Minas Tirith. And we're not aware that this is going to happen, but what does he do? Dirty, mean person, makes us wait the entire first half of the novel before we go back to Sam and Frodo. So we find out what happens. Gandalf and Pippin right off to Minas Tirith. They get into Minas Tirith, page 7, I'm skipping a bunch, and we come up to page 753. Now they're getting ready to meet Denethor. Who is Denethor? Not king. Steward of Gondor. What else? Father of Boromir and Faramir. Okay? And Gandalf tells Pippin, bottom of 753, be careful of your words. This is no time for hobbit pertness. Theoden is a kindly old man. Theoden, king of Rohan, kindly old man. Denethor is of another sort. Proud, subtle, a man of far greater lineage and power, though he's not called a king. He'll speak most to you. Why? He wants you to tell him of his son Boromir. He loved him greatly, perhaps too much. How can you love a son too much? How can you love a child too much? What if you love one child more than the other?
Jealousy.
And that can create that. What else can parents do if they love a child too much?
Pressure them to doing stuff they don't want to do.
Vicariously live through that child. I want you to be XYZ. Why? I want you to have a better life than I do. What is the parent really doing there? Where do we really see this the most? Mothers and weddings. Especially if they have daughters. If a daughter gets married, what does mom want to do? Run the show. Daughter, often, I've been involved, seen too many weddings. Daughter often has very little say. Mom writes the guest list. Mom just, hires the florist, blah, 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 blah. In this case, it's a father, okay? So, don't tell him about Frodo. Why not? And then he also says, nothing about Aragorn. Why not? What's wrong with Strider? Notice, don't tell him about Aragorn. How does Pippin respond? Strider? He's coming anyways, isn't he? And Gandalf's like, come on, man. If you never paid any attention to anything, see Master Pippin, next page. There is no time to instruct you now in the history of Gondor, though it might have been better, blah, 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 blah. It is scarcely wise on bringing the news of the death of his heir to a mighty lord to speak overmuch of the coming of one who will, if he comes, claim the kingship. Kingship? What are you talking about, Gandalf? I don't remember any kings. It's like, wake up. Well, what was Pippin doing in Rivendell?
Screwing around.
Was Pippin at the Council of Elrond? No. No. Was Pippin there in the fields of Rohan when Aragorn whipped off his hood and said, I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and have descended through long line from Elendil, Isildur, etc., etc.? Nope. What has he seen of Aragorn?
He's just a
Strider. Dressed in stained, smelly, road-weary clothes. Okay? So, they go off and meet Denethor. And page 755. Denethor shows them the horn that Boromir always wore. And Pippin says, that's the horn that Boromir always wore. He said, yep. And he says, and I heard it blowing, blah, 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 blah. 13 days ago, Pippin goes, yeah, that'd be right. But no help came. Only orcs. He blew his horn. Help was supposed to come. Just orcs came. So you were there. Tell me. How did Denethor ask, how did you live? And Boromir died. This doesn't make sense. Pippin. Bottom of 755. The mightiest man may be slain by one arrow. Boromir was pierced by many. When last I saw him, he sank beside a tree and plucked a black feathered shaft from his side. So he's sitting there and he goes, okay? By the way, if you ever get shot with an arrow, don't pull it out. Leave it there because it'll bleed if you pull it out. You won't bleed to death if you leave it in. Go to the hospital, they'll take care of it. But I honor his memory. And what does Pippin do? Lord, little service, no doubt, will so great a lord of men think to find in a hobbit. Yet such as it is, I will offer it. And he pulls out his little sword, which is like a penknife to Denethor, and puts it at his feet. What has he just done? He's pledged allegiance. Okay? He's sworn homage. I put myself in your service. I am yours to command. And Denethor looks at it and says, I recognize that sword. That's one of our swords from a long time ago. Okay? And Gandalf's like, damn, Pippin. Okay, if you really want to go through this, take the hilt. Okay? So, Pippin does. And he swears fealty to Gondor. Notice, to Gondor, not to Denethor. Right? What's his first command? Talk. Tell me everything you can about my son, about how he died, about why he died, about where he was when he died, about what was going on. You know, start at the center and kind of work outwards. And before Pippin does say all that, Gandalf says, and maybe we can talk a little bit too before the end of the day. Okay? And he says, is it not much to you? Does it not count as news that Saruman is overthrown and I have broken his staff? Yeah, it's news. It's important. I understand. But I already knew that. Again, it's kind of like, how did you already know that? Because nobody came from Isengard to here before me. And we get this description, middle of 757. Denethor looked indeed much more like a great wizard than Gandalf did. More kingly, beautiful, powerful, and older. Yet by a sense other than sight, Pippin perceived that Gandalf had the greater power, the deeper wisdom, and a majesty that was veiled. And he was older, far older. And he wonders, how old is Gandalf? Treebeard had said something about wizards, but even then he had not thought of Gandalf as one of them. What was Gandalf? In what far time and place did he come into the world, and when would he leave it? And then he stops thinking about that, and he sees that Denethor and Gandalf still looked each other in the eye, and Denethor was the first to withdraw his gaze. Why? Growing up in California, I don't mean to be racist or anything like that. This is what we would call a Mexican standoff. Okay? Playing chicken. Stupid thing to do in cars, you know. You aim right for the other and you hope that the other guy... What's it an indication of? Here, not that. It's an indication of strength. Who breaks off?
Denethor.
Denethor. Why? He's got nothing on Gandalf. So, Denethor says, Yea, for though the stones be lost, they say, still the lords of Gondor have keener sight than lesser men. Well, we know the stones are not lost. Why?
They have one.
Because that's why Pippin is there. He held it, he touched it, he looked in it. He talked to Sauron in it. So, Pippin talks, they eat. Pippin talks, they eat. And page 758, Denethor tells Gandalf, you can come and go as you wish. No one will stop you except for when I'm sleeping. Let your wrath and an old man's folly run off, and then return to my comfort. Gandalf, folly? Folly means foolishness. No. When you're a dotard, then you'll die. You use your grief as a cloak. That is, you're using your grief over Boromir's death as a mask. You are trying to hide your true intentions. Don't you think I understand your purpose in questioning for an hour someone who knows the least? You want answers to your questions? They're right here. Denethor. Well, if you understand it, then, be content with that. The Lord of Gondor is not to be made the tool of other men's purposes. That is, I'm not one of your pawns, Gandalf. However worthy, right? Because this chess game is really important. Gandalf versus Sauron, so to speak. And to him there is no purpose higher in the world as it now stands than the good of Gondor. And the rule of Gondor is mine, no one else's, unless the king should come again. Now, he said a couple of important things there. What to him is most important?
Good of Gondor?
What does that not mean? It's not necessarily defeating Sauron.
Preserving it as it is.
What about Rivendell? What about the Shire?
Couldn't care less.
What about Ithilien? Yeah, they're on their own. Okay? What about the second part? Rule of Gondor's mine. Unless the king should come again. What's he mean by that? Unless the king should come again.
He doesn't think it would happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, unless pixies and fairy dust are real. Gandalf, unless the king should come again, notice the part he latches onto. Well, my lord steward, he calls him by his title. Because what does a steward do?
Serve the king?
No. Well, kind of.
Just kind of stand in like a substitute.
Okay? Stands in. What is a quote-unquote a steward? They don't call them these anymore. I mean, what do they call them now? Flight attendants. On a plane do. We think of that person, serves drinks, brings meals, etc. Okay? But the steward that he's talking about here is the person who is the representative of the authority. Why? The authority is gone. We have a term for that today, but we don't use it. It's the vice president. What's the vice president's whole purpose, according to the Constitution? It's one thing.
To fill the president's role if he dies.
To become president, should something happen to the president. Period. It's why the vice, it sucks to be vice president. I mean, yeah, you get to fly around on Air Force Two and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have real official job duties. You're just sitting there waiting. In some cases, probably praying, somebody kill him. Other times, probably going, I don't want the job. So the steward's just there marking time. In that task, that is, to maintain some kingdom against the king's return, you shall have all the aid that you're pleased to ask for. If you want help preserving your kingdom until the time that the king returns, just ask. But I will say this, the rule of no realm is mine. What did Denethor say? I rule Gondor. till the king returns. Gandalf says, I don't rule any realm. See, Denethor's kind of insinuating, you want power, you want control, which is the exact same thing Saruman said. But all worthy things that are in peril as the world now stands, those are my care. And for my part, I shall not wholly fail of my task, though Gondor should perish. If anything passes through this night, that can still grow fair or bear fruit and flower again in days to come. What's he just said? Here's Gondor.
Even if Gondor goes down, he still hasn't completely failed.
There's the rest of Middle Earth, and if there's a single flower over here that blooms in the morning, and Gondor is wiped off the face of Middle Earth, I haven't totally failed. Now, Denethor's probably going, what? A flower? Gondor? What do you mean, man? I mean, Gondor's definitely more important than a flower. Not to Gandalf. For I also am a steward. Did you not know? Notice, not capital steward. But if he's a steward, one, what is he steward of? And two, who is he steward for? All Middle Earth is under Gandalf's care and protection. Okay? Who for? Maybe it's for the people of Middle Earth. Maybe that is, he's not steward for quote-unquote Eru Iluvatar. But I think he is. How and why do I think he is? Because of what he told the Balrog just before they fell. He says, I am the wielder of the flame of Anor, that's his sword, and the servant of the secret fire. The secret fire is what Eru Iluvatar put at the heart of Arda. Arda is the universe, the created universe. Okay? Not sure what that means other than, the beingness, the existence, etc. And I think it's tied to when Gandalf comes back and Gimli says, but Gandalf, you're all in white now. And he says, yes, I am white now. Like he has been totally purified. Maybe he is some of that secret fire himself. Okay? And with that, Gandalf does what? He turns and walks out. He's not even going to give Denethor the benefit of a response. So, they go off. Pippin says, did the best I could. Gandalf says, you did okay. He got more than you intended, etc., etc. And Pippin then gets dressed in the armor of Gondor, because now he's a warrior. And Tolkien leads us to chapter 2, Passing of the Grey Company. So we leave Gandalf and Pippin, and now we're going off to Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Merry. And we find out immediately. Aragorn says, I got to go to Minas Tirith too, but I'm not going straight to Minas Tirith. Merry says, don't leave me behind. He said, don't worry, we'll stick with you for a while. But what happens? These three go off on their own road. Merry gets left behind with the riders of Rohan. Okay? So, riders from the north come. And page 777, Merry swears allegiance to Theoden. Notice, totally unaware that Pippin is doing the exact same thing. And Pippin is totally unaware that Merry's doing the exact same thing. So they're both swearing allegiance to kingdoms way the you-know-what away from the Shire. Okay? So, 779, the riders have come, they've talked to Aragorn, and Aragorn tells Theoden, 779, I've got to ride by the paths of the dead. The paths of the dead, said Theoden, and trembled. Why do you speak of them? If there be truth in such paths, their gate is in Dunharrow. Aramir's like, no, man, you can't do that. What a waste. Okay? So the paths of the dead are definitely not somewhere you want to go. They're not just, walkways through cemeteries. Nor is it necessarily, well, I'll leave that aside for a moment. So, they keep talking, page 780, and Aragorn tells Legolas and Gimli, I've looked in the Stone of Orthanc. Gimli's like, really, man, Gandalf warned you. You shouldn't have done that. And Aragorn's like, you forget to whom you speak. And his eyes glinted. A little bit of anger there. What do you fear that I should say to him? He says, nay, Gimli. It was a bitter struggle, and the weariness is slow to pass. I spoke no word to him, and in the end I wrenched the stone to my own will. In other words, the way these things work is not you look at them, you type in a URL, and you go to wherever the address is of the other seeing stone. You look into the stone, and if you have the strength of will, you force the other stones to show you where they are and what they can. He looks in and he kind of dials up Barad-dûr, Sauron's number. Sauron comes and answers, and they have a contest of wills, just like the contest of wills we saw between Gandalf and Denethor. And what does Aragorn tell us? He won. He defeated Sauron. When was the last time that happened? Well, in terms of the Palantir, or Palantiri, never. The last time Sauron was quote-unquote defeated, Gandalf and the White Council in Dol Guldur, when he was the necromancer. Last time before that, when Aragorn's grandfather cut his finger off and took the ring. That alone he will find hard to endure. In other words, that's going to bug the you-know-what out of Sauron. And he beheld me. Meaning, I showed him me. Yeah, he saw me. But in other guys than you see me here. What other guys?
Kingly form.
He saw me as the king to be. And that scares him. If that will aid him, then I've done ill. But I don't think it will. To know that I lived and walked the earth was a blow to his heart, for he knew it not till now. The eyes in Orthanc did not see through the armor of Theoden, but Sauron has not forgotten Isildur and the sword of Elendil. It's like he saw me, and he had one of those shadow pains that soldiers get who have, limbs amputated. Why did he show himself to him? Because where does Aragorn think Frodo is headed? Mordor. And so what does he want Sauron to do? Be a distraction. He wants to draw Sauron out. He wants him to make him strike first. Okay? So, they talk about the paths of the dead some more. And Aragorn tells them, bottom of 781, and we're going to get almost the same thing repeated on the bottom of another couple of pages. He tells them about the prophecy about the paths of the dead and says, I don't want to go this way. Need drives me. Therefore, only of your free will would I have you come. Gimli, I'm going to go. I'm not afraid of, caves and stuff. Legolas, I'll go too, for I don't fear the dead. So, skip a bunch. Top of 783. Eowyn comes up to Aragorn. Why doesn't she want him to go through the paths of the dead?
She knows how perilous it is.
She knows how perilous it is, not because she's been there, but, it's got a bad reputation, let's say. Why else? Because she's fallen in love with him. Or she loves him. Maybe not fallen in love with him. Or another way of putting it, she's fallen in love with the idea of falling in love with Aragorn. Okay. 783. They've talked about the paths of the dead. And she says, is it then your errand to seek death? For that is all that you will find on that road. I mean, are you looking to die? Is that what you want? Aragorn, they may suffer me to pass. That is, they may allow me to pass. I've got to go this way. This is madness, she says. Here are men of renown and prowess. That is, you have warriors with you of great name and great ability, whom you should not take into the shadows, but should lead to war. Don't go that way. He says, it's not madness, for I go on a... Frodo asked Gollum, how do we shape our path? And then when they were in Cirith Ungol, Frodo says, so our path is laid. And Sam said, yeah, but if we'd known about that back when we left Bag End, we wouldn't have come. Now, Aragorn says, I go on a path appointed. This is my destiny. Okay? But those who follow me do so of their own free will. That is, they don't have to come. And I'll go by myself if I need to. Okay? So, a few hours pass. And she comes up again. Come on, don't go. I have to, he says. Only so can I see any hope of doing my part in the war against Sauron. Why? Because of the prophecy that was brought to him, which he already knew about, by the way. It's not like, he's totally surprised. He knows all that. It's because of the prophecy, and it's because of something else that the Riders of the North bring to him. Okay? That was woven for him by Arwen. That tells him, this is the way I got to go. Because the way he's got to go is through the paths of the dead. He's going to come out there, and where's he going to arrive? He's going to arrive at a river. And he's going to take a boat on the river. And when he gets on the boat, he's going to hoist something up the mast that's going to tell people the king is coming. Okay?
What does he hoist?
He hoists a big flag that has a symbol on it. We'll talk about that when we get to it. So, she says, okay, if you're going to go, let me come with you. 784 at the top. Let me ride in your following, for I am weary of skulking in the hills and wish to face peril in battle. I want to face, what's peril mean?
Danger.
Danger. It's bordering on death and battle. Your duty is with your people. Duty. Why do we need our Arwen Warrior Princess in the Jackson films when we have Eowyn? I mean, she's a pretty good exemplar of this mentality. Am I not of the house of Eorl, a shield maiden and not a dry nurse? I have waited on faltering feet long enough. Whose faltering feet? Her uncles, Theoden's. Since they falter no longer, it seems, may I not now spend my life as I will? What do you do when you spend something? Like money. You exchange it. What happens to the money?
Goes to someone else.
Yeah, you don't have it anymore. So, what's she talking about doing with her life? Not having it anymore. In exchange for what? What will she get when she is no longer living?
Honor.
Honor. But she won't be around to enjoy that honor, will she? No, it'll just be, here lies Eowyn, an honorable shield maiden. Well, woohoo, yay. Okay? Aragorn. Few may do that with honor. That is, few may spend their lives honorably. Give up. Give away their lives honorably. He says, but let's talk about your specific case. Didn't you accept the charge to govern the people until their Lord's return? The charge. Theoden said, will you guard and govern the people until I return? She said yes. So Aragorn says, and if you had not been chosen, then some marshal or other captain would have been chosen. And he couldn't ride away from his charge. Were he weary of it or no? Because what would happen? What would he be charged with if he rode away from his duty? Desertion. Absent without leave. Desertion's a lot worse than just AWOL. She goes, shall I always be chosen? Here's what you mean. Shall I always be left behind when the riders depart? To mind the house? We're not going to have time. To mind the house while they win renown and find food and beds when they return? That is, they ride off and what do they get? Glory. They get glory. Meanwhile, I'm making beds. And Aragorn turns that over. The time may come when none will return. Then there will be need of valor without renown. For none shall remember the deeds that are done in the last defense of your homes. Remember Frodo and Sam talking about stories? And about the kind of story you don't want to get caught in is the kind where you lose. Because what happens? That's not a story. Because if you and all those you love lose, the story is not told. What point is Aragorn making? Which takes greater valor? To ride off to a battle you're pretty sure you're going to win. You know, I'm not belittling. Please don't take it that way. But the United States marching into Baghdad in 2003. Or to be 18 years old, landing off an amphibious craft, looking at the cliffs of Normandy, knowing that there's just buku Germans ready to cut you in pieces. This one, your certainty, your likelihood of success is much, much greater. This one, that's a crapshoot, man. Total crapshoot. What's his point? Takes a hell of a lot more valor to fight in a battle knowing no one will ever know you fought. No one will ever talk about your heroic deeds. Okay? We'll stop there. Did not get as far as I hoped. Quiz over Two Towers on Monday. We're going to try and finish Return of the King next week. I think we'll be able to.